The sun had begun to set over the vast forest as Elena, an avid hiker, realized she had strayed too far from the trail. The serenity of nature, which once felt so inviting, now became ominous as darkness crept in. She clutched her map tightly, but it was no use, she was lost. As the hours passed, fear began to set in. Her phone had no signal, the cold night air seeped through her jacket, and the eerie sounds of the forest played tricks on her mind. A misstep sent her tumbling down a rocky slope, leaving her with a twisted ankle. Pain surged through her leg as she tried to stand, only to collapse back onto the cold, damp ground. The forest seemed alive with whispers, each rustle of leaves making her heart race. She sat there, helpless, staring up at the canopy of trees that now looked like towering shadows. Tears welled up in her eyes as she shouted for help, her voice swallowed by the endless trees. Just as despair started to take hold, she heard the soft crunch of leaves nearby. Her heart pounded. Was it a predator? Through the dim light of the moon, a pair of glowing eyes emerged. It was a wolf. Fear gripped her, but the wolf didn't snarl or bare its teeth. Instead, it stood still, its silver fur shimmering under the moonlight, staring at her as if assessing her situation. Elena froze, unsure of what to do. Her breaths were shallow and every muscle in her body was tense. To her surprise, the wolf slowly approached, its movements cautious but deliberate. It sniffed at her injured leg, then turned and disappeared into the forest. She thought it was gone, but minutes later, she heard rustling again. The wolf returned, carrying a large branch in its mouth. It dropped the branch near her and nudged it toward her with its nose. Understanding its intention, Elena used the branch as a makeshift crutch to prop herself up. The wolf stayed close, guiding her through the darkness. Whenever she faltered, it would stop and wait, its piercing eyes silently encouraging her to keep going. The journey was grueling, and every step sent jolts of pain through her leg. But the wolf's presence gave her a sense of safety she couldn't explain. The forest seemed endless, its maze of trees stretching on forever. The wolf navigated through it with ease, leading her past thorny bushes and around treacherous roots. At times, it would pause and look back as if ensuring she was still following. Elena marveled at how the animal seemed to understand her struggle. Exhaustion weighed heavily on her, and there were moments when she wanted to give up. But every time she faltered, the wolf's unwavering gaze pushed her forward. The hours dragged on and the night grew colder. The silence of the forest was broken only by the sound of her labored breathing and the faint padding of the wolf's paws. She found herself talking to the wolf, her voice shaky but grateful. "Thank you," she whispered, unsure if the animal could even comprehend her words. "I don't know why you're helping me, but I'll never forget this." As the night deepened, Elena began to notice the subtleties of the wolf's behavior. It seemed to listen intently to the sounds of the forest, its ears twitching at the slightest noise. There were moments when it stopped abruptly, standing alert, its gaze fixed on something in the distance. Elena's heart raced during those pauses, but the wolf always continued, its calm demeanor reassuring her that they were safe. At one point, the wolf led her to a small stream. The moonlight danced on the water's surface as the wolf nudged her toward it, encouraging her to drink. Grateful for the respite, Elena lowered herself onto the ground and cupped her hands to take a sip. The cold water was refreshing, and for a brief moment she felt a sense of peace despite the situation. The journey continued and the terrain grew more challenging. They crossed a narrow path flanked by steep drops, the ground uneven and treacherous. Elena's crutch slipped on loose rocks and she nearly fell, but the wolf was there, its body pressed against hers, steadying her. Tears filled her eyes, not from fear or pain, but from the overwhelming gratitude she felt for this mysterious creature. As the first light of dawn began to filter through the trees, Elena's strength was nearly gone. Her injured leg throbbed, and her arms ached from using the makeshift crutch. Just when she thought she couldn't take another step, the forest opened up, revealing a clearing. In the distance she saw it, a ranger's cabin. Relief flooded her as she limped toward the structure, her heart pounding with hope. The wolf stayed by her side until she reached the porch of the cabin. Elena turned to look at her savior, but the wolf was already retreating into the forest. Its silver fur glistened in the morning light, and for a moment, it paused, looking back at her one last time. Their eyes met, and in that instant, Elena felt an unspoken connection, a bond that transcended words. Then, the wolf disappeared into the trees, leaving her with a profound sense of awe. Elena collapsed onto the cabin's porch, her body trembling from exhaustion and emotion. The rangers found her shortly after and helped her inside. As she recounted her story, their expressions shifted from concern to disbelief. Some dismissed it as the delusions of an exhausted mind, but others were captivated, believing her tale of the wolf who had guided her to safety. In the days that followed, as Elena recovered, she couldn't stop thinking about the wolf. She replayed the events over and over in her mind, marveling at the intelligence and compassion the animal had shown. She began researching wolves, learning about their behavior and their often misunderstood nature. The more she learned, the more she felt a deep connection to the creature that had saved her. Months later, Elena returned to the forest, this time prepared and with a new sense of respect for the wilderness. She walked the trails with a cautious reverence, her eyes scanning the trees, hoping for a glimpse of her savior. Though she never saw the wolf again, she often felt its presence, as if it were watching over her from the shadows. Inspired by her experience, Elena dedicated herself to advocating for wildlife conservation. She shared her story with others, hoping to change the perception of wolves and highlight their importance in the ecosystem. Her tale of survival and the wolf's selfless act touched the hearts of many, spreading awareness and inspiring action. Years later, as Elena stood at the edge of the forest, she smiled, her heart filled with gratitude. The wolf had not only saved her life but had also given her a new purpose. In the wild, where survival often seems ruthless, she had witnessed an act of pure compassion. It was a reminder that even in the most untamed corners of the world, there is room for kindness and connection. She whispered a quiet thank you to the forest, knowing that somewhere within its depths her silent guardian roamed, a symbol of hope and resilience.